Hey there, it's Maria from the Happy Healing Shop and welcome back to another video. So I was thinking a lot about how much fun I had at the last psychic night event. We did a private psychic night for someone and it was so much fun. And I had a really long question and answer session with the group. There was just like amazing questions coming out of that group. Just so inquisitive and intuitive, and it was just so much fun to get to kind of just like get their perspective and to be able to clarify some things for them. And I also got me thinking about all the questions that people tend to ask me when they find out I'm a psychic medium, or people who get readings from me. I always give them a chance to ask questions, and there's some questions that I notice are reoccurring themes for people. So I was thinking, why might as well do a video all about frequently asked questions about being psychic, mediumship, the spirit world, the afterlife, and all things metaphysical. So let's get started. So the first question that I get asked like most commonly is, what happens when you die? Of course, whether people are actively thinking about it or not, it's somewhere in the back of your mind, because that's a natural thought to have, because we're so rooted in this physical world. We gotta know what happens next. And some people believe there's nothing, and some people believe there's lots of trumpets and pearly gates, and some people think there's just blackness and lights and tunnels and all kinds of stuff, right? It really depends on your perception of what the afterlife is when you first get there. So it's a little bit of a complex answer as well, because from what I've been shown over time working with the spirit world, is that there's not just one dimension of what we would perceive as like heaven or the afterlife. There's multiple dimensions, and I'm not entirely sure how many. Some people say there's like 7, and I don't know, I think I've heard some people say there's 11. I'm just going off my intuition, what I've been kind of working with the spirits I've worked with, my guides, my team. I haven't really dived into like the exact number of levels, and to be honest, it's not all that important, because there's so many more complex aspects of dimensionality that would just be really convoluted if I tried to explain. But the fact is that, but the message here is that there's not just one dimension of heaven. And the thing is that you can create whatever you want to be your afterlife experience, really. And depending on the way you died and your belief systems or lack of belief systems or feelings before death, there's like an entryway kind of gathering area that could be endless types of things. It's not the same for two people, it's different for everyone. So for that little kind of entry space into that other side, let's say, could be for some people like a white room with family members, coming, and angels and Jesus like coming to grab them and to take them to the afterlife. For others, it could be like, waking up in the middle of like a beautiful field. For other people, it could be like coming into like your favorite childhood memory, so a place that you loved in childhood. It's really like, it's a mirror of what you're resonating with. So I encourage people to think about what they want their afterlife transition to be like. I know it sounds a little morbid, but it's actually beautiful, and it's going to happen one day anyway. And whether you're an atheist or whether you're very religious in any kind of religion, it's like heaven is not a religious place. It's a spiritual place, and that's different than religion. Now, religion can have spirituality. There's a whole other kind of debate, but heaven is not like a branded place that one religion has dominion over. So heaven, I'm only calling it heaven because that's what people would feel more comfortable knowing it as. It's really just other higher dimensions that we transition into that are dedicated for this kind of collecting of spirits. And so, the other aspect is like, there's the different vibrations of the various levels of what we would call the heaven dimensions, or the dimensions of the afterlife, are just different from each other. So there's some, the more denser levels of the like afterlife, the heaven dimension or whatever, are a little more earthly in feeling. They're a little more earthy, a little more familiar, and they're meant to handle a little bit denser transitions. So if someone had a really rough death and they were able to cross over, there's different types of energies there to work with that lower vibration, because it's really resonant. So like, think of it as a magnet, and you're gonna, when you cross over, whatever you're dealing with when you die will kind of determine what level you end up in when you get there. And it's not a race. It's not a oh, you were a bad person, you're going to the hell one. And it's not that. It's not a hell dimension. It's a place where you can take more time as a soul to recover from the traumatic aspects of your life. So, or the denser aspects of your life that maybe you didn't quite come to terms with before you died, or weren't aware of, or you're in shock, things like that. Sometimes these spirits don't cross over right away, and sometimes, very rarely, they can get stuck here. And I'm saying stuck only because it's always temporary. They always have angels and guides and family members trying to get their attention to cross them over, but sometimes it's such a deep state of grief that occasionally, and I want to stress occasionally, the souls can kind of reside here on the earthly plane for a while, and it could be for a very long time sometimes, but there are people who practice mediumship who can, like, you know, if those spirits, they feel that kind of urge to be helped, then they can help cross these spirits over very quickly usually. So, and I've done work like that as well, but I don't try to forcefully cross any spirits over unless they're brought to me by my guides and they're asking for help. So I don't forcefully cross anyone over because that's part of their free will still, even though they passed away. So, but yes, there are people who could help with that. But most of the time, even the most traumatized people when they cross over, will go to a dimension that's meant to handle those kind of denser emotions a bit. And they have specialized teams of spirits who are working with those souls at the various levels of dimensions of what we would call maybe heaven or the afterlife. So basically, as you start to work through these kind of process these things, your vibration will rise, which I explained to someone one time was like a hot air balloon. So like if you just died from a traumatic death, or like had a lot of unresolved issues and were just feeling really like negatively when you died, then, you know, you're just putting a little air in the balloon and it's lifting to like a lower dimension. And then once you free yourself of certain things you've processed, then you put a little more air in the balloon, and it just keeps rising through the dimensions. And the dimensions become less earthly the higher you go, become more abstract, more kind of nebulous. It's not as like recognizable as like Earth. But I'd say a lot of spirits enjoy staying somewhere in like the mid-level range of heaven, where it still feels kind of familiar like Earth, but it's also a little more whimsical, a little more like out there, and kind of has it's like earthly a bit, but also like magic mixed in, and like other types of beings and stuff that you wouldn't see on Earth. So it just depends which level the spirit resides in. It's totally up to them, and it's just part of the growth process, because we continue to grow after we pass away. And we prep for, if we're coming in for another life, we work with our team to prep for that. So I feel like that was actually almost an answer to a few questions in this one thing. But the short answer is, everybody has a different crossing over experience depending on your belief system, your energy, your expectation. Even people who are atheists can cross over and see family members and stuff. It's not like they're going to get punished because they didn't believe it existed. They're still going to have, it might be a little more of a minimalist experience. You know, it might not be so showy or flashy. They might not show up in a field or whatever, but it's still going to be a nice, pleasant, loving, comforting experience for people. So it's never a terrorizing experience, ever. It's a feeling of relief and comfort, and you'll always have family members and friends who crossed over, and your guides, angels, religious figures that you believed in life can also appear if that's what you really want to see when you cross over. They will come to give you comfort, and you can see your animals. It just depends. So you know, think of it as like planning your vacation after you pass away. Like, you start to think about like, what would I like my afterlife to be like? Because it's great. And when I talk to spirits, like, this is a whole other question. I'll just say it, I guess, since we're transitioning. Like, what do people do on the other side, right? And this is a very, very vast answer, so I'll try to keep it as general as possible. But it's so fun to see what spirits do on the other side. I noticed that like there's a resurgence and development of like hobbies that people enjoyed in life. A lot of times they'll kind of really dive into those and connect with those kind of passions on a more spiritual level, and everything's just more magical and it just manifests instantly, so people can go push the limits of their creativity and their hobbies and their passions like more than they could in the physical world. And so, you know, they can really like, it's like a vacation, but there was also a lot of growth and learning too. If some spirits enjoy like being very scholastic when they cross over, so they like to go read and they like to go into like the Akashic records, which is like the repository of like all that ever was and will be, and every moment of every being's life for eternity and before is all there. And so they like to go and like read and learn. And read, I mean, like, you know, they can shift things to be what's comfortable for them. For some, Akashic records might be like a cave, like a mystical cave, and for others, Akashic records might be like a big old school library. So they can customize the experience, but it's just a projection of what makes you happy. So, you know, you can manifest those repositories however is fun for you. But yes, there's spirits take up interest in like studies of all kinds and understanding things and learning energies. Some like to really dive into learning about their past lives and to really like heal and to get insight on those. Some like to, you know, get really artistic and creative. Some like to work with their hands, and some like to, you know, do casual things like my grandfather showed me an image of him, you know, rolling up his jeans in a nice little stream that he created and putting his feet in, having a coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and just enjoying life. Just like this beautiful, peaceful time. And he has a garden. Actually, it's funny because I ran into a number of spirits that have gardens, and they're just like, they just have so much fun because it's just so much more like whimsical. But yeah, it can vary. It's whatever you want it to be, that's what you do in the afterlife. It can be really mundane or it can be really cosmic. You know, you can go kind of peek into other timelines. You can talk to aliens, ETs, star people, whatever you want to call it. Basically beings from other dimensions, timelines, and like races and energetic like makeups. You can merge with God energy and learn from him, or I'm not going to say him. You can merge with God energy. You can, gosh, I mean, it's crazy. You can become a guide, you can become a counselor and counsel other spirits. You can plan your next life. I mean, it's endless. I'm just giving you little tiny snippet examples, but literally if you can imagine it, imagine all the positive things you wish you could do or whatever, like you can do it in the afterlife. However, it's not quite the same as a physical experience here. It's different, and you don't get that tangible feeling of touch and things like that. It's simulated, it's close, not quite. It's, you know, it's your energy ball. You're just like a ball of energy, and you can present however you want. So it's just not the same. So which leads me to the next kind of question that could lead into this. Well, you know, this whole heaven dimensions thing sounds amazing. Why should I even bother living? And, you know, should I just, like, why do I want to live? And so that's, you know, a serious question. And I've gotten that several times. And I understand why. And honestly, it really is, there's always a cause. I mean, there's always a cause and effect, right? So, like, if you decide to, like, end your life, you're literally taking yourself out of the lesson you came here to learn, and you're gonna have to learn that lesson again and again and again. You're gonna have to keep reincarnating and learn that lesson until you learn it. That's part of just, you know, when you sign up to do something, you're gonna have to do it, and it could take many lifetimes to do it. So if you're already halfway through your life, partway through your life, and you put all this effort into living already, why would you waste that opportunity to just abandon the lessons you came here to learn? And also just people, what it does to affect people around you that loved you, cared about you, that carries a heavy karmic debt as well. And again, I really want to take out any kind of negative. I always talk about desensationalizing this stuff and taking out the negative, like, stuff that may have come from, like, you know, ancestral like perceptions of things, or like religion and like judgment. This isn't a judgment, it's just a counterbalancing. You made a commitment and a contract to come here to do certain thing, and if you decide to opt out after you've already decided to do the contract, then you're going to have to fulfill that contract again in another life. It's really, that's the simplest way to explain it. And every time you hurt people by making that kind of choice, then you're going to have extra karma to work with. So it's not even just like, not like, oh, you didn't fulfill your contract, so now you have to learn all this again, but also plus all the other things you're going to have to make up to other people in your next lives, right? So I'm not coming from an insensitive standpoint. I know what this is like myself. I've had feelings where I don't belong and don't want to be here. I know what it's like. So I'm coming from a place of compassion, but also trying to give a simple answer that is just, it's not based on judgment. It's just based on cause and effect. And we come here for a reason. You wouldn't be here if you weren't supposed to be here. If you were meant to pass away, there will be an out for you to pass away. But taking your own life is often cheating yourself out of the contract you set out to do here. And there can be massive repercussions to the people you were meant to help, work with, change their lives. And I'll use a reference here. So that Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, my husband loves that movie, his family always loved that movie, and we always get all teary-eyed when we watch it, and it has an amazing message. The main character wants to end his life because it's just gotten to be too much, and he thinks that everyone would be better off without him. But when before he jumps off the bridge, an angel intercepts him and shows him the life that everyone would have without him, and it was miserable and terrible because he didn't realize, just in day-to-day grind of life, how many positive impacts he made to everyone he ever met and what that did for them to grow. And even if you feel like you cause people a lot of pain or whatever, you're actually still doing your part. You are providing growth for people. So whether you think you're doing positive things, whether you don't think you're doing positive things, you're still helping people grow no matter what. So don't underestimate how important and special you are being a part of this incarnation and any incarnation you have. So that's kind of my message there, and to always surround yourself with people who you can talk to, who can talk some sense into you and love you and make you feel like there's so much more to live for. So, and it's a very complex issue, and I get it, again, completely understand. But it's important to have the right care and to not trying to find validations like, oh, well, the afterlife is so great, why would I want to live here? There's a reason why we keep coming back, because it's actually much more fun for us to incarnate, because that's where we grow and learn. Imagine if everything was so easy all the time, it would get boring, right? So that's part of the reason we come here. We like to be stimulated, we like to learn. So it's hard for us to see that now here when we kind of suffer a lot, but it really is what you make it, and there's so many opportunities for beautiful livings here, creating your own paradise here. So we can do a more in-depth video on this in the future, but that kind of leads from that question. Another question I get a lot is, how did you know you were psychic and a medium? And really it's different for everybody. For me, it was very in my face since I was very young. My earliest memories have been paranormal. I've always seen beings, spirits. I've seen all kinds of paranormal events since I was very small. I always was able to sense energies and to sense things that happened to people without them telling me. Even if I was too young to understand what they were, I could see it. I always had kind of like prophetic events, like I could see the future and things would happen. I'd have premonitions all the time. I'd have like flash, even when I was awake, I would have like premonitions of things happening and them happening. I'd have prophetic dreams. I would always kind of feel other people's emotions and know what they were thinking and feeling. I could sense people's medical issues and I could feel them as if they were my own. So I just have kind of a wide medley of different psychic gifts and mediumship, and it basically kind of made my life miserable until I finally learned how to use it and what the spirit world was trying to tell me and what the angelic realms and all the other realms that I work with were trying to tell me. So it was a long process and a long road to acceptance, and it was riddled with a lot of trials and a lot of frustration and times where I just felt like I just couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't just exist anymore because it was just too hard, and I wasn't telling like anybody about it except for a couple key people, like friends. My parents were scared of it. Like didn't feel like I could talk to my family. I felt like there's always going to be like some religious oh yeah, that's not like what Jesus would do and whatever, you know. So I just always felt like there would be some religious like stuff thrown at me. Even though there's a long kind of, it seems like there's a line creeping kind of way back in my dad's side of the family of psychic abilities, healing abilities, and mediumship abilities. I'm the first person to really like go all out with it. I had a great aunt that was a healer, but it wasn't like a profession for her. It was just something she did in her village when people needed it. So for me, it's really difficult when you're isolated. You feel like you're going crazy. You feel like you can't talk to anyone about it. You feel like people would judge you and not want to be your friend anymore. And it's really hard. So it was a long journey, you know, seeing dead people standing around my bed like almost every night, like people floating above me, coming through walls, like different things that were not even people, like other types of beings, objects. Like I've seen countless amounts of things. I could probably make like a giant book like this of all the things I've seen just from like, you know, being woken up in the middle of the night by these things, people, whatever. Having all these paranormal events happening, not being an insomniac because of it, and still managing to live a double life as like a normal person was difficult. And so yeah, for me it was very like, you know, it was pretty much in my face, and it was just a matter of time before I accepted it, and now I do. So but it's different for everyone. It depends on your point of reference too. Like some people might artificially like hold down their gifts longer than maybe someone who didn't have a strong religious background, because they might have too much fear and be afraid of judgment, both from a religious consequences side and also like familial like judgment and stuff. So some people are getting stuff and they just don't realize they're getting it because they're just like ignoring everything because it's too terrifying to dive into that realm. You know, and it depends on your gifts. I use several clairs. I have a couple of clairs that are the strongest, but I do use a lot of different clairs. Clairs meaning clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairgustance, claircognizance, and there's some other more weird clairs. But yes, I can taste things that spirits send me. I can feel things. I can know things just by just knowing them. I can see things. I can hear things. Those are the ones I work with the most. But some people specialize in a couple clairs, or that's their kind of strong points. They're like just clairvoyance or clairvoyance and cognizance or something. And it doesn't make it any like less powerful. It's just different people have different ways of using, like their gifts are just presenting differently in different people. So yeah, so that's how it presents for me, is like complete sensory overload, which is difficult sometimes to just exist in society and feel like that. But I've kind of had to learn some stuff to deal over the years, but it's not easy, I'll tell you. But so you may have the claircognizance only, let's say, where it's just like I could just know something is gonna happen and I can't tell you why, but I just know. Or you just know something about a subject you've never learned and it's not possible that you know it because you never studied it. Things like that, you know. You can know things about people without anyone telling you. You can know things about a crime scene that people don't know about, you know, and you just somehow know. These are kind of like examples of different ways you can manifest or have gifts manifested. So don't like look at anybody else's gifts as better than yours or more desirable. Work with the ones that really stand out to you, and as you get more developed in the ones that are prominent, then you can take time to build the other gifts that maybe aren't so like natural at first, but you can learn how to hone these gifts. And so that's kind of how I learned as a medium. I really started suspecting it about 10 years ago, and kind of was a slow journey to like being okay with actually practicing it, and which is a fairly recent occurrence for me. So yeah, it was a weird journey, but I'm here. So which leads me into, can anyone learn how to be a medium or a psychic? And the answer to that is different depending on who you ask. I personally feel that all humans have a potential to develop their psychic gifts, especially psychic gifts. We all have some sort of psychic kind of ability. It could be it could just be like a gut feeling, right? The gut feeling. That I feel like a lot of people, most people can relate to that, the gut feeling. So that's a type of psychic kind of awareness. But, you know, some people say like, I don't really feel much past that. And it just takes more practice and more training and more time to develop those things. It's just like, you know, someone who's like, I want to learn the violin, but I don't have a good musical ear, and, you know, I don't have anybody in my family who's good at music, but I'm gonna learn violin. And maybe at first, you know, it's kind of choppy, it's kind of rough, and doesn't sound pretty, but you have your two hands and you have a working brain and you have two ears, so you learn ways to play the violin. And maybe you won't be like a famous violinist or like, you know, but you'll learn how to play the violin eventually at some level. And like I said, it may be kind of a more basic level, or it might be just like proficient, but it may not be as good as someone who's like born a savant, but you can learn it for sure. It's just a matter of, but most people don't want to learn it, or they get intimidated by it, or they think it's too hard, or they don't know where to start. So it's just a matter of desire. If you want to do something, you can learn it. Mediumship is a little more difficult because it's just like you can learn to be a medium, but it's just a little more difficult, and it takes even more training. If you don't have any like kind of draw to psychic abilities and awareness, you could start off by using divination tools to help you communicate with spirit. And then, you know, maybe that might be your technique if you don't feel like you can really visualize and, you know, you can really have an easy time sensing spirits. You can use divination tools to help you kind of as an introductory way to communicate. So pendulums, tarot cards, spirit boards, you know, gosh, there's like so many divination tools that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but those are just some common examples. Some people use tea leaves, some people, you know, if you give a spirit something to communicate with, like if you just set the intention you want them to communicate that way, they can communicate with a flashlight, you know what I mean? So it's up to you really. It could take many, many years to learn to become a natural medium, but I've read examples of people who had no ability to visualize whatsoever, they didn't sense things easily. It wasn't like they had like precognitive abilities or anything like that, and they just practiced through, I noticed meditation's a big gateway to help open that up. Practicing, meditating on the third eye, using crystals, using essential oils, setting the intention that you want to receive that knowledge. And if you want to, then spirits will work with you and your guides will work with you to help open up those areas in the upper chakras, so that you can start to receive more psychic information and, you know, sense spirits. So, you know, I really kind of get a little peeved when I hear mediums talk about how great they are and say like, I don't know, mediums are born, honey, not made. And I'm like, okay, yeah, have fun with that. Like, that's kind of a jerk move, but okay. So I personally I'm not a fan of when people say something's impossible because they like to feel special. And honestly, I can't really blame them, because I feel like, you know, that's kind of an old school like mediumship teaching. I think, you know, people like to feel special. And I think also that there was a time where mediumship was deemed like something so out there and so crazy, and, you know, so people kind of had insulated communities of other mediums, and, you know, they really did feel special, and they really did believe that mediumship could be only inherited like naturally. So I get it, I do, but that's not the case. And there's plenty of people out there who could prove that. So you know, and that's part of, there's an older like psychic and medium kind of energy that I personally just don't resonate with like at all, and that's okay, because that energy was suitable for the time it was. Like the performing mediums that, you know, perform in front of a studio audience, like that kind of stuff, like, you know, mediums that like write like these books with their faces on the cover and stuff, like, you know, I love mediumship books, but I notice I don't really resonate with those older kind of books that have like the, you know, portrait kind of thing where they're like posing like this, and like, I know all the secrets of the universe. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not being too much of a jerk. But honestly, yeah, it served its purpose, but now there's a new kind of rebellious mediums coming in who are trying to make it more of a, you know, try to encourage people to tap into their natural abilities, and I'm about that. I don't think people should tell you what you can and can't do, because technically, you'd be amazed. Like, humans are insanely adaptable, and we have so much built-in talent and perception, and it's just a matter of awareness. That's really what it is. I was born with like blasted open awareness, and so it was undeniable. I couldn't run away from it anymore. But for others, it might be more subtle, and you know, you might be distracted all the time with stuff. So that's something that is up for debate for some, but to me, you can learn it if you have the desire and the tools to do it. So that's the short answer. Another question I get asked all the time is how I get psychic information and what it looks like when spirits talk to me and when I'm getting psychic information. So for me, like I said, it's a multi-sensory experience. So I can get sent feelings of how someone felt before they died, like their physical areas that were how they felt. Like I can feel their anxiety, I can feel heart attacks, drowning, you know, someone getting shot. Like I can feel all that, stabbed, like any kind of thing. I can feel that, and it's very quick and temporary, and they don't make it as bad as how it was when they died, but I can feel like a kind of a mock of that in my body. Even I can feel that because I'm also a medical intuitive. I can also feel people's ailments in parts of their body, and I can also see kind of like a little bit of an x-ray, like what's going on in people's bodies and like the systems involved in creating that dysfunction. So yeah, so I can get all kinds of information like that as well as feeling it for myself. Also, I hear spirits speaking to me, so clairaudiently in my mind's ear, if you will. I get lots of like, I really enjoy getting imagery and video because I'm a very visual person. So I get like little video clips of things. I get images. I get like zoomed in, like focused pictures on like an object or like a body part. I get colors. I could see people's auras clairvoyantly, so I don't use my physical eyeballs to see people's auras. I use my my clairvoyant gifts to see people's auras, but I could see it in my mind's eye around them and the different colors they have and the imbalances that they have in their aura as well. I can see in my also clairvoyantly figures, like how many I could see kind of people lining up around someone. If someone's coming for spirit communication, I can kind of see figures, and then there's sometimes in the front that are more like detailed, and then ones more in the back that are kind of just like there but not really as like needing to communicate as much as people in the front, let's say. I could see male or female, I could see age. Sometimes I get metaphorical like representations of how someone looks. I don't always get like the literal way that they actually look. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I can see hobbies, I can feel emotions, I can know things just by like, they just send me the knowing. I can see like diagrams and the way things connect. I can, the spirits will give me lots of diagrams actually. Like sometimes it almost feels like I'm watching the Science Channel or something when they're showing like the diagram of the cosmos and like how it all works and like the webs of things. Like it's very complex sometimes. I know especially angels and higher vibrational beings like to use a lot of diagrams and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I really get a little bit of everything. I can get like body sensations that are like hot and cold. I can start sweating, I can start shaking. And I know that all sounds very scary, like, ah, why would you put yourself through that? But it's honestly very brief, and I can separate it from myself and them. And it's just enough to give me the idea of what happened. But they're not trying to torture me. Although I have had spirits that are hanging around me trying to give me a message, and I'm just like too busy and I'm not tuning in. And they'll send me like their ailment over and over and over, and then I'll think like, what's wrong with me this week? Like, why am I hurting in this weird area? And then I'll realize it's a spirit that was just trying to be like, hey, I died this way, I need help. And so, or I want to talk to someone about it. And you know, I'm like, oh, duh, okay. So it's confusing sometimes because I am a heavy empath as well, and I can sense all that stuff, which is a little intense. But yeah, so that's kind of some ideas of how I'm presented information. Images are probably one of the images and feelings are like some of the most easy ways to communicate information. I also can taste things, and I can also feel sensations, like even on my fingertips and stuff. And I can have, did I say smells already? So all that. And then it's funny because when I'm sleeping, my clairaudience and clairvoyance like go to a whole other level. So when I get woken up in the middle of the night, like I'll hear sometimes a spirit just like screaming in my ear, but it feels like my physical ear, and I'm like, ah, you know, I'll get woken up like, jeez, man. Or like I will feel like I'm physically with my eyes seeing spirits in my room. So I think it's because I'm reaching another state of consciousness, like not distracted, and like my body is going to a higher vibration when I sleep, that I can kind of go in between dimensions and see with my physical eyes, because all my filters are down. The kind of more visceral, like I literally will see people, like solid people, like standing around my bed. Sometimes they'll be like see-through, but sometimes they'll be floating, but a lot of times I'll see like straight up people that look real, like in my room, and it used to really like concern me, but I realize it's just they have different manifestation capabilities. So anyway, so that's kind of some ideas. Sorry, my cat is being a little love bug right now. So cute. So yeah, that's some of the ways that I get information. So another one I get is about like punishment. Like, do bad people go to the bad place when they die? And honestly, there is no technical like hell repository. It is possible to manifest that, like something temporarily for yourself that's kind of like a hell experience. It's just that it's just a dimension that's a little above ours that allows you to manifest your thoughts. So you might be like asking yourself, like, yeah, if there's no such thing as hell, then how come all those people with the near-death experiences saw hell? Like, what about that? But honestly, it's because they believed in hell. So they had a deep-seated fear that they were going to go to hell, because they may have had a strong belief system that there was some part of them that was undeserving to go to the good place. And there's some people who've been atheists and seen the hell, right? But it's different for everyone. That hell is never the same. And a lot of times it's pictured as like the stuff you would hear about in like biblical texts or like religious texts. Like it's very like caricaturized. Like there's flames and there's heads on pikes, and it's from something that affected them, that's in their subconscious, that when they are in that state of like limbo or after death, if that fear is strong enough that they don't deserve to have a good afterlife, or they're so fearful and they're just focusing on like the hell, whatever experience, then they can, because your thoughts are powerful, create some sort of like hell-like experience that's very temporary, and it's completely created by them. It's literally manifested by the person who believes in hell so much that they go to a temporary hell. However, it's temporary. And you will have many opportunities to realize that you've created it for yourself, and so then you can progress to a more pleasant plane of afterlife existence. And again, this is actually not common. Most of the time, people are able to kind of get into a place where they're ready to go, or they have guides, around them helping them. And actually, a lot of the near-death experiences that have seen hell, they actually haven't passed over into that realm. That's actually another dimension that's not even part of the heaven dimensions, that, like I said, is above ours. That is like a staging dimension. It's basically what you make it. So some people have after near-death experiences, and in that dimension, they instead decide to create like all-knowing, I've heard like things about like spinning wheels of knowledge and things. Like they can create a different, more cosmic looking dimension for themselves. It's really like what you make it. So that dimension is not necessarily, it's not actually in the heaven dimension. It's like a lower dimension. So definitely like people who have done things that are not so great can believe deep down that they're going to hell, and can create that kind of experience for them because they feel like that's what they deserve. And if that's what they need to heal and to feel like they've paid retribution, like yes, someone could technically create a hell dimension for themselves. However, that's not the final destination, and there's going to be your team of spirit guides and angels and whoever else works with you, family members, trying to get you out and to show you like, hey, that's not actually where you were going to go, but okay. So really, mostly people go to different levels of a peaceful afterlife. So And sometimes the really bad people know, like, they feel, like, depending on their kind of point of cultural reference and belief, if they're murderers and stuff, like, they can kind of stick around sometimes on the earth plane because they are so afraid that they're going to go to the bad place, even though they would actually just go to a denser dimension of heaven until they can work through their issues at, what they've done in life. So yes, spirits can create whatever they feel they need to pay retribution or whatever, but just know that if you're out there and you feel like you're trying to turn your life around and you've done some stuff that you're not proud of, like, you're not going to go to hell. Like, you're going to go to the dimension of heaven that's appropriate for you, unless you really want to go or believe with all your heart and soul that you're going to hell. But again, I do not feel that that is a very common occurrence. So possible, yes, but not common. So just envision the afterlife you want and go there. So another thing people ask me about, since we're talking about the fiery flames of hell, is demons and devils and all this stuff. So religion has done an amazing job of terrifying the crap out of people about existence. And also religion has given people a lot of hope. But the flip side is that people tend to get focused on blaming things outside of themselves for things going wrong in their lives. Many cultures have a concept of cursing or demons getting into people's bodies and just taking over their free will and making them do things that they shouldn't do. When in reality, a lot of times there's things like mental illness and bodily dysfunctions and stress and anxiety and depression that can make people's behaviors change erratically. And they just don't have a frame of reference to understand that. So people have passed down generations of stories and oral traditions about demons and devils and things like that. Are there lower vibrational beings lower than 3D that can terrorize us? Sure, there are. There's energies at all levels, but those energies cannot come near you if you don't believe in them. It's just not even in your plane of existence. You're creating your reality constantly. So cultures and people who tend to have more of a natural belief system of demons, or be more likely to, if they focus on it enough, have that happen to them. If they truly believe that they have no power over their life and demons are ruining everything, they're gonna manifest some sort of demon, dark shadow person, whatever, that's gonna put all the blame on them. There are people who experience lifetimes of torment from beings that can be considered demons. And yes, there are beings out there that do feed on fear and do feed on malevolence and stuff like that. But they're not attracted to, they can't have any fun with people who don't believe in them, have a high enough vibration where it's just not even a resonance. Like, it would be too uncomfortable for them to go towards someone who is living in the light. And what I mean by that is not like in a religious way, but just like a good person, someone who takes care of their body, someone who takes care of the people around them, who does their best to be a positive person. And unless you have some sort of contract that you came down here to be tormented by demon-like beings, most of the time it's just going to be people who believe in it so much that they actually can create with their own consciousness a energetic version of themselves that's people call them thought forms, but you can really just call it whatever you want. That's where the words come in that cultures have given things over the years. But really, it's an aspect of your consciousness that is kind of like broken off a little bit. It's still attached to you that embodies your most deepest, darkest aspects of yourself. So like the things like self-hatred and self-pity and all these, like, if you're just like living in that darkness your whole life and like it's just too comfortable for you to live in the lowest vibrations, then you might create aspects of yourself that represent pieces of your psyche that manifest energetically, because that's how powerful our thoughts are, into things that we can perceive as demons, poltergeists, etc. So there are many times where these things that are demons are really just aspects of ourselves that are the dark side of ourselves. And you can get rid of them for sure, but they do accumulate and they end up kind of taking on lives of their own, and they can torment others too, because they're residing in a certain dimension, and there's going to be other energies like them in those dimensions that they can relate to, and they can come across like demons or jinn or whatever, depending on your cultural point of reference, like I said. So yes, are there malevolent spirits out there that have stayed earthbound that do people harm? Yes, there are. Again though, I like to focus on people knowing that they are the most powerful aspect of manifesting their reality. So, and protecting yourself. So if you believe that you are protected, if you believe that nothing can come near you, and you state that, you're like, only positive energy can come around me, or only beings of the light can come around me, and you just say that enough and you believe that, then truly that's your intention, the universe will give you that. If you believe that like the world is full of dark, insidious, like demons running around everywhere, then yeah, you might be more apt to have like a bad Ouija board experience, or like have poltergeist experience, because you're just, part of you almost kind of wants to see if it's real. Part of you is just like, it's like this part you don't even really consciously always are aware of. There's a part of you that's not even maybe conscious that is curious. So that's the thing, be very cognizant of your thoughts. But for most people, they're not going to experience that kind of energy. It's again fairly rare. You're more likely to run into a ghost, which is a residual energy. It's not even like a conscious energy. It's just a residual imprint, and you know, that might annoy you. And by the way, ghosts aren't, I've a lot over the years thought about ghosts, and I feel comfortable now saying that ghosts are, we could maybe classify ghosts in the realm of like energies that have attached to a location that are not necessarily the actual spirit, but they're aspects of that person that was alive. And also, live people can create ghosts. If they've really caused a lot of ruckus in space, then moved out, they can have like that thought form, that aspect of themselves that kind of feels like a ghost, that's wreaking havoc on whoever moves in next. And also, you're more likely to run into maybe and by the way, still rare, but you're more likely to run into an annoying, angry earthbound spirit, which is not a ghost. It's actually a spirit who has decided with their free will to stay here, because no one is making them stay here. They are staying here because they're afraid of what's after, right? They're very attached to this reality, this dense reality. So they just relate more here. So, you know, that's their choice, and no one can make them cross over. So I'd say that's more likely than running into like a demon type energy. So, and as far as the devil, like, is there a being that manages these lower level, like lower vibration beings? Like, yes. I think you could even say this being is like an angel of some sort, but I don't think this being is inherently evil. It's just that's their job. There's different energies to manage different realms of existence. So, you know, that's all just up to your interpretation and what you manifest in the world. So there's no devil here to like, you know, come with like the horns and the tail and steal your soul, because there's no hell to put you in, and it's really more of a being that manages the dominion of the lower realms. That's it. And because, you know, we live in the 3D, there's other beings that live in the 4D and the 5D, like just like there's beings that live in the 2D and the 1D that we're unfamiliar with, you know, that kind of cross paths with us sometimes. So there's beings in every realm to kind of help manage those things. So that's all that is. That's the closest thing. But that being itself is not evil. It's just, that's what it was assigned to manage. So it doesn't have judgment. It doesn't have an intent. It's still of the light. It's just managing that realm. So yeah, that's again, I'm going to say this, and I feel like I've said this in other videos, but just in case I haven't, no one has all the answers. No one person in existence has all the answers. All this information brought in by mediums is our best attempt at explaining what we're given, information we're given, and what we see. And you can find patterns amongst mediums even, and, you know, see some consistencies, a lot of consistencies in channeled information. However, to me, it's important as a medium to try and keep your bias out of the equation, because it's difficult to do that, by the way, sometimes nearly impossible. But taking a bias out of the equation, trying to take, you know, something that could completely slant a way you see things out of the equation, can help to deliver messages that are less likely to be attached to a certain paradigm. So, but inevitably there's going to be at least a little bit of bias and everything. So if you don't resonate with what I'm saying, find another medium you resonate with. So, but in my experience, and I see a lot of spirits, I mean like all the time, constantly. I'm surrounded by them. I can't catch a break. They're everywhere. I've dealt with all kinds of beings. I have not ever been harassed by any kind of demon, like I've sensed negative spirits, but they don't come around me because I don't let them. I just, no, you can't. I have created a forbidden zone where they cannot come near me. And that's what I do. I reinforce that, I build that shield, and that's just the way I like to live. Some people actually like to interact with these beings, and I can't judge them for it. That's something they're interested in. So do what resonates with you, and don't let anyone tell you they have all the answers, because I don't have all the answers. This is just what I'm given. I can only relate what I'm given. I can only relate what I've learned and what feels the most closest to, you know, something of, you know, I guess resonance. But at the end of the day, if this doesn't resonate with you, I'm not here to convince you. So hopefully this was helpful if you want to learn more about this, but find a medium that you resonate with and you know, look into them. But I encourage you to think outside the box, and I encourage you to think outside of structure. But people ask, are fairies, gnomes, and little trolls and other types of seemingly fantasy creatures, are they real? Are leprechauns real? Are they real? Are leprechauns real, etc.? And the answer from my perspective and what I've seen is yes, you can see them in ways that are most resonant with you. So you can kind of project certain visuals onto them. And also there's like a certain consciousness in certain parts of the world that back into the like ancestry of a certain culture may have kind of seen an energy and kind of classified it as a certain thing, like a leprechaun, let's say. And so then like there's like a certain bubble of consciousness around that part of the world that kind of tends to recognize the energy and see it as a leprechaun, let's say. But in other parts of the world, they might see it as some sort of gremlin or like some sort of little, you know, they might not see it like in the way that a leprechaun might be seen in another part of the world. They might call it something different. Just like Yetis, Bigfoots, whatever, like people perceive them a little differently and have different lore around them, but there's a lot of the same thing. It's just about if you're born into a certain consciousness sub-bubble in the part of the world you're in, you kind of inherit, more likely to inherit that consciousness, that perception that's been crafted around that energy. So it can be different for different people. However, if you were to study like lore about these creatures from around the world, dating back as far as we can go with written history, there are a lot of similarities between the traits of these beings. So that's something that you can find a lot of commonalities for, even if they're described differently and their appearance and terminology is kind of differently done from area to area. But these types of beings are real, and personally, I sense them more as energies, kind of more playful energies. I don't like really put a visual label on it. I just sense them. And it's something I haven't worked a lot with, although I've been told by another medium that I do have a lot of elementals around me because I'm a nature freak. Love nature, love the planet, and they do tend to apparently congregate around people who are trying to help the earth, and they do get kind of fussy when people don't take care of the planet. So yes, they can be mischievous, but also the thing to remember too is that people like to, there's a lot of lore that's been passed down, and if you like piss the fairies off and they're gonna go like mess your life up, they're gonna give you bad luck or whatever. Part of that is the deitization of some of these little beings, and honestly, I do feel that the vast majority of them are just pretty pleasant beings, and they're not actually out to hurt people. But people can, they can mess with people, they can be mischievous, like little tricksters, like little kids just messing with you. But they do deserve to be treated with respect. They are people of their own, even though maybe we can't always see them, and people see them differently, and people kind of judge them based off of like what's in textbooks and stuff. I do feel that they don't necessarily appreciate being labeled, and they want to just do what they do best, and if you're a nice person and you respect them, then they're happy. But if they see you doing shitty things, they might mess with you. That's like the worst I think they can do. Because guess what? No one can impinge on your free will. Like, no one can infringe on your free will. So So guess what? No one can infringe on your free will, including the elementals. So that's up to you. If you feel you're being cursed, that's you doing that to yourself and perceiving that. So yes, like, are there beings that come to our earth that don't have great intentions? Sure, there is, yes. But these little elementals are really here to kind of keep, they're kind of working behind the scenes to just kind of keep plants healthy, to keep soils healthy, to keep environments. They kind of raise the vibration of the environment they're in. They have definitely been very frustrated with the damage we've been doing to the environment. So if you're gonna say on a scale of anger, they are more frustrated than they've ever been. And they have to work extra hard, and they are attaching themselves to more people who are trying to help the environment and even nudging people they see could have that potential. But they are a type of being. They just live in a different dimension. They're just, another type of being that can be deemed as mythical, but no, they're there. And you can even consider like crystals to be elemental beings. So it's really beings that kind of govern and exist and prefer to be in the natural environment. And they're kind of overlaid over our reality, like their dimension is, and they can intermingle with us. But honestly, unless like you really want to start working with them, they don't usually reveal themselves. Unless you're sensitive, unless you really feel drawn to work with them, then that might be a sign you should start communicating with them. So yeah, that's what I'm getting on elementals, and they are real and they're cute. So they're sweet beings. They're just, they're just picking up after us all the time. So help them out. Help an elemental out one of these days, and clean up after yourself. Another question I get is about how people deal with the body of a loved one. Like, people get worried that when they pass away, if there's no directive of how they want their body handled, that there's going to be some sort of wrath from the spirit. When the spirit crosses over, the ego, there's like an ego death, like they can have like their personality and stuff, but the human ego disintegrates when they cross over, even in the lower levels of the heaven dimension. So while they might have had some preferences with life, as soon as they cross over, they don't have that same attachment to their body. So what I find is they usually just don't care. Like, they just want, usually, the family to do with what makes them the most comfortable. So it's kind of interesting how we fuss so much about it here, but when we die, we're like, oh, look at that shell, that was interesting. So that's another interesting kind of question I get. And the truth is, and over and over, what I get is that they really just don't care that much about their bodies, because it's not them. They realize when they cross over that they're an infinite soul, an infinite being that's had other lives. So it doesn't have that kind of importance anymore. Another question I've gotten several times, and it's always an interesting question, is, are Ouija boards evil? Evil! Well, here's the thing, guys. I'm gonna tell you again that it's what you make it. If you grew up in a culture that said those boards are evil, 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 then you are gonna be thinking to yourself, oh God, if I use this board, something evil's gonna happen. Oh. So you're already putting that out there. And not to mention, if you're not setting the intention for what you actually want to come through, and protecting the space and sealing off the space from any energies that you don't want to be there, then it's kind of like an open casting call for whoever to come mess with you. And this is the thing too, that there's plenty of people that have used Ouija boards and haven't set boundaries and been fine. And there's some people that have been majorly screwed up from using a Ouija board. And it's really what you make it. You manifest your reality. There's, people have been using Ouija boards for freaking forever. And it's so funny because I recently watched this YouTube channel called, I think it's called The Paranormal Files. And I always like to just see I always like to learn the history of these places are haunted, and it's just interesting to watch it unfold, and I've always been into paranormal shows. But they did this one episode that is all about this guy's epic Ouija board collection. This guy literally has I don't even know, maybe hundreds of Ouija boards. Not all of them in his home, but he has his home is just Ouija boards and planchettes, which are the little heart-shaped kind of spade thing that you use to go on the Ouija board. His house is literally just full of antique vintage Ouija boards. And he's like, the gates of hell haven't opened up yet. And I just started laughing because I was like, yes, exactly. Maybe if someone was a psychic medium and had all those Ouija boards, they can maybe sense spirits attached to them. But I don't think he identified that way. He was kind of a skeptic that enjoyed the history. So it's just funny, like, he didn't believe they're evil, and they're not evil to him at all. Like, he has such an affection for them. They make him happy. He enjoys teaching people about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, such a great example of how humans create stereotypes around things and scare the shit out of people for generations and generations. So the thing is that, yeah, if you are like expecting the Ouija board to pull out some evil demon, like, yeah, that's what you might get that experience. It's possible. But if you're setting the stage, respecting the process, asking your guides and angels to come in, or whatever beings you wish to protect you, creating a shield of white light around, and setting a nice calm intention with the space, not just like being high and drunk with a bunch of rowdy friends like screwing around with the board. Because if your vibration's lowered and you're trying to do spirit communication, guess what? Your vibration's not the right vibe to like get the higher level, higher vibrational beings. So you might get more like earthbound spirits and those lower dimensional beings we talked about in another video, which could be perceived as demons, but that's just a name we give to uncomfortable beings that reside in the lower realms. So that's really up to you. And the important thing too is, like, you know, for example, like I use a pendulum, and a pendulum is technically a type of divination, and people get scared. But the truth is that, and I used to be afraid of divination tools when I was younger because I just didn't understand. Because I still had that religious bias of being raised as a Christian and being like scared of everything that was like spiritual, you know? And so I found that literally it's so freaking simple. Like, in fact, if your vibration's high enough and you live in that kind of mindset of love and positivity, you literally can't even attract a dark spirit if you tried, because it's not comfortable or feasible for them to get into your energy field because you're not a vibrational match. And this whole universe manifests for vibrational matches. That's what it is. It's like an algorithm running all the time, and then you're submitting an algorithm that's saying, so the algorithm of the universe is, if energy A thinks a B times about C, you know, subject matter, then it equals D outcome, right? So you're submitting the variables for this formula, like your own equation, to the universe. The universe is like, oh, taking in formula, or A plus B plus C equals D. Okay, well, the dark energy and the light energy, they just don't go together. So, you know, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's physically uncomfortable for both parties. Like, you wouldn't be able to even maintain it that long, even if you could like forcefully make it happen. There's people who don't even believe in using like psychic protection because they know their vibration is the most important thing in working with the spirit world and who they attract. So there's that. So no, the Ouija board is not inherently evil. However, you can do with it what you please, and you can bring in what you please. So just be cognizant when you are using it to set the right intentions. And hey, if you're looking to open up a gate to the lower dimensions with your Ouija board, then if that's your cup of tea, have fun. Good luck getting rid of all those, but hey, you know, to each their own. But if you don't want to deal with that, but you just want to use the Ouija board, then, you know, make sure you set the right intentions. Additionally, I will say, one time I heard a psychic medium, I think her name is Gigi Young, she's on YouTube, and I followed her for a long time. And just, you know, one day I saw her post a video about the collective consciousness of Ouija boards, and I was like, yes, this is exactly how I feel about it. That there's also a collective consciousness component, and I super resonate with this. I feel like she's spot on. That there is also, specifically with the Ouija brand boards, a reputation that developed in the more modern usages of the Ouija boards due to popular culture and the fear it invoked in people, that there's a collective consciousness associated now with the word Ouija. So there is more of a tendency for negative things to come through if you don't set the intention with the Ouija board. It can be the case, but again, if you're setting up a positive space and a positive state of mind and, you know, asking for certain protection measures, then you shouldn't have a problem. But in that case too, I would recommend boards made by other manufacturers that are not Ouija, just because of the collective consciousness component. So like I've heard them referred to as like spirit boards also, and so there's other manufacturers that make boards that are not called Ouija that I think, if you're worried about that at all, just don't get a Ouija brand board. Just get a different type of spirit board, because it's really I do feel that there's been a collective consciousness kind of damage towards the energy of Ouija that has lowered the kind of lowered the collective vibration of the feeling around Ouija boards. So when you feel any kind of fear, even that like anxiety inducing or that like excited fear, like when you're buying the Ouija board, you're like, oh god, oh, what's gonna happen? You're tapping into that collective consciousness of fear and scary things. And again, you're kind of opening the door to experience that. So that's what I'll say about it. And honestly, you can turn things in this world into positive or negative things, right? Like they took the Nazis took the swastika, a very peaceful symbol, and turned it into something that now we can't unsee. So they've changed the collective consciousness around that symbol. And to be honest, I think it did damage the consciousness around that symbol, and until it's repurposed, I don't know how. I think that symbol has been retired in a way, although people will still use it in a spiritual way, but it's been kind of tainted because some a-holes went and repurposed it for evil. So, but that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's what you make it. So yeah, set your intention for everything you do, and that's how you can custom create a life that you actually want to live.